The title of our webinar today is How to Sync SharePoint and Staffbase for an Internal Comms Slam Dunk. We are joined by our premier partner, KL Software Technologies, and a wonderful customer as well, who you'll hear from a little bit later in the webinar. He'll share his story. A little bit about us, if you are unfamiliar with Staffbase. We are headquartered in Germany and New York. We are about 90 employees strong with about 250 customers. These are some of our customers right here, some of their logos. We specialize in working with enterprise companies and leaders who want to connect with their workforce. We offer an internal comms app. We are also an HR portal, a mobile HR portal, and also a mobile front door intranet. So you are able to integrate with solutions like SharePoint that we're talking about today. And our premier partners, again, KL Software Technologies. They have 15 years of experience and excellence in the space of Microsoft, and also they're a gold partner. They work cloud with SharePoint. They also are certified Microsoft professionals. They have been a premier partner of ours in the US for a couple of years also. And we are happy to have them to talk all things tech with us today. Oops, I skipped one. The four people that you see here at the top of your screen, I am Carla Kath. I am the Director of Marketing for Staffbase. We have Patrick. Patrick, you want to introduce yourself here?
Absolutely, yeah. My name is Patrick. I'm
there
the
he
head
is.
of product here at Staffbase, based out of our New York office. And I'm responsible for understanding the needs of our customers and translating that into our product strategy and roadmap. And obviously, SharePoint and intranet topics are an important part of that, which is why I'm very excited that we have both Raghav from KLST as well as Aditya, one of our customers here, and going to take a deep dive into those topics today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Raghav, how about you? Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Raghav Jagannathan. I've been in the industry for over 21 years now. I'm the co-founder and president of KLST. We are a global software and services company, as Carla said. We are a Staffbase, very proud Staffbase premium partner. I'm incredibly proud to be presenting here with our key customer, NBA, with Aditya Ghosh. So yeah, very excited and to share our experience working at Staffbase and how we implement it for a number of our customers and hear from our customer how they're using Staffbase.
All right. And Aditya, last but not least.
I'm Aditya Ghosh. I'm head of corporate application services at the NBA, and we kind of I'm tasked with supporting the internal applications within the league and the teams. And it's been an interesting ride. So we're going to talk about how we use Staffbase and how we use SharePoint, and probably add some value and ideas to the webinar.
Awesome. Awesome. I'm going to go back a second because I feel like this slide is important. It takes a team for all of us to work together to make things happen. It's also a journey. We're here right now, but I know that we're going to talk about next steps and how we're going to continue to work together with partners like Raghav and with our customers like Aditya to take their platforms to the next level. So it's exciting to have them with us and to be on this journey together today. First, we wanted to take a poll of our participants and see where you are in your journey with SharePoint and where you are headed. So if you could answer this poll right now, are you using SharePoint today? It'll help us to understand where you're coming from. And we can see already that many of you are using SharePoint right now. And nobody said, I don't know, so that's also a good thing. All right, so we have 50% of attendees in this webinar are using SharePoint, and there are about 6% that say no. And you can see those results right here. I think that that will give us something to talk about and reference later, as many of you sound familiar with SharePoint and its capabilities. The next survey that we wanted to throw out there before we start our discussion is, how big of a topic is mobile for all of you? So you look to reach your workforce. Workforces are becoming increasingly mobile, with many remote employees like myself. Let's see. All right. I think we have most attendees taken the poll. A few more. All right. Looks like this is a good indicator. We have 50% of attendees that say that mobile is very important. Somewhat important, maybe about 12% of you on the fence looking at mobile, but unsure if it's first and foremost on your list of things to tackle. And then 6% say not important, or maybe not important yet. So thank you guys for doing that. I think that will help to guide our discussion. If you are familiar with SharePoint, for the 50% of you, this is often what we hear from our customers and clients. This is what daily life with SharePoint and a SharePoint intranet can look like. I've been in this fight, so I thought this was applicable, and I hope that we can help to maybe make it look a little less messy for some of you with some of the solutions that we offer today. Ragav and Patrick, I'm going to throw it over to you so you can talk a little bit about SharePoint, what it's good for, what it's a little bit more messy at doing, and how Staffbase can work together with your SharePoint intranet to take it to the next level.
Absolutely. Thank you, Carla. What we want to do now, before we get into the case study itself, is have a quick look on a little bit of the groundwork on why we're even talking about SharePoint here and why it is important to have something like Staffbase next to it and combine the two. So we want to talk a little bit about the pain points and about the differences. And you know, as many of you on this webinar are using SharePoint, I guess you will be familiar with some of these, but maybe some of that is new. And for us, really, the most important thing is for everybody to understand that SharePoint in itself is a collaboration tool. It's a document-based collaboration tool, and that's what it was made for, and that's where it has its strengths. But it's not necessarily made or not necessarily great for internal communications. Now, there's lots of add-ons and customizations that you can do to get SharePoint where you need them for communications and also for mobile, but that's not necessarily what it is built for. On the same, argumentation, Staffbase itself does not have all the strengths that a SharePoint has. So we really think that both tools have their strengths and weaknesses, and that it's necessary for you to have both the collaboration and the communication. You need to combine the two tools, and that's what we want to talk about. Just to name some of the pain points that we keep hearing from customers, the biggest one is usually reach. That your SharePoint can easily reach all your desktop employees, all the people in your intranet, all the people that have VPN access. But usually you have all these, people on the factory floor and people that are out in the field, and those you usually don't reach very well with your SharePoint, right? And that's where Staffbase now comes in, as we're a branded app on your smartphone, on your personal smartphone. That's the first time now that all employees can really access those kind of information. On top of that, we make sure that every employee can join, even if they have no AD access or even if they don't have an email at all. Staffbase offers options for that. The second big pain point that we hear a lot is relevance and sending the right information at the right time. That's something with SharePoint. Sometimes the message is too broadly spread. There's no easy way to send notifications, which means you really just put yourself and the information out there, but you don't know how it is consumed, by whom it is consumed. You don't have a lot of control over that. And here we see a real communication tool like Staffbase offers you things like push notifications, email notifications, and it also offers you easy ways to target your audience and give them the right information when they need them. The third point where we think a real communication tool is much better than just using SharePoint in itself is the ease of use. As we just saw in that picture before, it can be a real mess to work with SharePoint, not just on the user side, but also on the content creator side. And that's where we come in with an easy-to-use CMS, an easy-to-use app that all your employees can use without finding it too overwhelming, really that intranet light aspect. That's something we can do with Staffbase, and therefore also much easier build relationships through simple functionality like commenting, liking, or chat. That's usually not included in SharePoint per default. At that point, Raghav, I would do you have anything to add there on the pain points you usually see when you talk to customers?
No, I think you covered it well. I think from our experience, Staffbase has a tremendous REST layer, an API layer, which makes it extensible. For the non-technical folks in the room, SharePoint and Staffbase talk to each other through this web services protocol, which helps us extend SharePoint, as Patrick said, getting the out-of-the-box responsiveness, getting a mobile app to go. Those are partly available for SharePoint. SharePoint does have a mobile app and so on, but a lot of work needs to go in to make things work. With Staffbase, we've seen that we can write a custom plugin using the Staffbase APIs or expose SharePoint content in a very easy way in Staffbase, or vice versa, which I know Patrick will cover later. So we from an extensibility perspective, I think it's a great, as it says, slam dunk. Yeah. So.
Awesome. Yeah. And that's really, those points are really the ones that we heard years ago when we started out with Staffbase, and that's where we then, said that there has to be a real communication solution next to that, that easy-to-use app for all employees. But now, obviously, right away when we did that, we saw the requirement to integrate both with each other. And we have 3 out-of-the-box solutions for that, or 3 paths that you can take to combine the two. And the first solution that we have for that is embedding Staffbase as a web part into your existing SharePoint. So basically, as you can see here on that picture on the right, you will still keep your SharePoint on the desktop. It will still include everything that you have, but you will just replace the whole news part of your SharePoint with a web part that includes Staffbase, right? And that's a pretty minimal change because you just replace that one part, but everything else stays the same. But what you also get through that is that you now have this Staffbase app that you can use on mobile. That includes everything that is within that web part. So you have this lightweight solution on mobile, and you still have your full SharePoint on the web, but it's enhanced through these things that Staffbase offers. A great thing that also comes with that is that you now can do the content creation within Staffbase, which has a much easier and more flexible CMS. But you could even do content creation within that web part or within the mobile app. So in all of these different components, it's possible to create a news post, for example, or a new page. A little bit of an extension to that would be that you could then at some point actually switch and use Staffbase as the homepage, not your SharePoint anymore on the web. This is what we call the front door intranet, that you start out with something that is more, customizable and more tailored towards your audience, and then you have different points where the user jumps into the actual SharePoint. But that's that doesn't necessarily need to be the first step. So that's the first solution, where you take a Staffbase, you let it target your mobile audience, and you just embed it into your existing SharePoint. The second solution that we see is syncing your existing SharePoint content to Staffbase. And that's usually the case if you want to keep your SharePoint on desktop exactly as it is today, right? You don't want to change anything with that. You just kind of want to extend it by a mobile application. And here we have a connector already ready. It's on the Microsoft App Store, and you can use it for SharePoint Online. And what it does is you can set it up and you can do a matching between your SharePoint and Staffbase, and it will automatically push all the news posts that you have in your SharePoint lists over to Staffbase, and then your employees can see that on a mobile device. Great thing about this is that it's also pretty minimal in the kind of change that you have to do on your site. The content creation stays within SharePoint. You just really get that extension from mobile. And here on the slide itself, you can see a screenshot of that connector on the bottom left. That's how it looks like actually in SharePoint after you edit it. You can do some configurations, say where should the content end up in Staffbase, and then that's it. All right, so those are the two solutions that we have out of the box that you can just pretty much enable as soon as you get started with Staffbase. And the third one is a little bit more custom. So if we switch to the next slide, what you see here is that you can also build custom integrations. Obviously, as Raghav previously said, both SharePoint and Staffbase have APIs and software development kits, which you can use in order to integrate pretty much any use case that you want, pretty much any use case that those powerful APIs allow you to do. For example, for Staffbase, that could be syncing content or sending out a push notification, even managing media if you want certain pictures to be available outside of your intranet. You can use the Staffbase API for that. You can even write a chatbot if you want certain functionality from your SharePoint available through a chatbot in Staffbase. Now that's possible through APIs as well. And what we do here in this area mostly is that we work together with implementation partners such as KLST in order to realize those solutions. Raghav, maybe can you quickly walk us through what a process would usually look like in that area?
Yeah, sure. So if you can go to the next slide, so we have a bunch of screenshots there. So the use case here was that it's a very common use case where you typically manage events in SharePoint. This could be your corporate events, could be a marketing calendar, it could be whatever. So the idea is that those events will live in SharePoint. They can be edited in SharePoint using out-of-the-box SharePoint tools. But those images may not be very clear, but you might see on the second image a push to Staffbase button. And what that does is automatically pushes that event into the Staffbase through the Staffbase API into the Staffbase CMS. And now you have a full-blown mobile view of the calendar through the Staffbase app using a calendar plugin within the Staffbase. To be able to expose SharePoint content, which is basically in lists in SharePoint, now visible in Staffbase, and vice versa. You could now edit that using Staffbase CMS, that event, and it'll kind of sync back to SharePoint. What's good about this is that right out of the box, as Pat said, you get notifications, so you don't have to build anything. Push notifications is right there. And many of the other Staffbase features which Patrick just talked about, especially with regards to email management, you automatically get within the app. So, and all this stuff can be just purely done through APIs. Again, for the technical folks on the call, SharePoint REST talking to Staffbase REST, and the magic just happens.
I like that. Aditya, we're going to switch over to your story now. So you can tell us about the magic a little bit and about your slam dunk. What were your challenges as the head of corporate application services at the MBA? What were your challenges and how did you find Staffbase as a solution?
So the challenge which kind of we still are trying to resolve on several fronts has been mobile, and how we can get, whether it's communication, documents, or publications over to mobile devices very easily, and also not carry forward the heaviness of the content in there. So our goal was to kind of find a way to easily create a solution in a cost-effective manner instead of rebuilding things from scratch for a publishing kind of mobile app, and have a solution that can talk to other systems within our environment and sync it over. So if you take one of the use cases we had is our events team. Our events team have events globally in different parts of the world, and they have their key decision points. For example, when the events are happening, key resources, key contact numbers that they need to use, any other communications that they may need, any light forms that they need to submit for, hey, by the way, is everything going great in the event? Is there something we need to do? Like all the internal management aspects of the event, we were looking for a solution for that, and kind of was driving towards either a communication tool or a full-blown application, if you will, that has other features like workflow and data collection. So we landed with Staffbase at the time. I was looking at different solutions, and I kind of, through reference and through other feedback, I started looking at Staffbase. It took a while because there was a lot of conversations that happened between me and Patrick at the time to really understand the product roadmap, because that was the key for me, because what you see in the product today was not what it was at the time. It was a very lightweight product to have a publishing engine in there. There was a forms engine in there. The API integrations were in works. But the intent was, I spoke to him about the roadmap, and his feedback always was, we can build it for you. And even, I think Frank Wolf, he would always say, right, we will do something, we'll get this done for you, because it was in the infancy. And the fact that it kind of fit in the roadmap and some of the suggestions that came through from us really aligned with what a corporate intranet app may look like. So fast forward, we kind of had two major goals with this solution. First of all, we realized, considering the nature of our environment, we may have multiple instances of this app depending on the audience, which is something that came into the product later in the day. The other piece was having a way to integrate it without having to reproduce content on multiple environments. So as Raghav spoke and Patrick spoke a little earlier, yes, there is a syncing process that's needed, but there are nuances that you need to think through, right? But end of the day, the goal would be that our goal was basically, I have certain messages, selected messages I want to go into the app and distribute. I have certain resources that I want there. I have events and calendars that I want there. And how can I kind of quickly automate that? And in addition, the push notifications is helpful, although we kind of refrain using it to the extent we need it for emergency kind of deal and now. But it worked great. So once it went out, the first thing we had for the first time is we have mobile apps, but there's tremendous investment behind it. Our LegalOps app and other applications that are there, we were not budgeted to do a kind of full-blown effort on this. We wanted something that we can quickly bring in, integrate, and deploy. And the white labeling was important for us as well. We want something that can be branded and kind of deployed to our devices internally through our MDM or mobile device management solution. So fast forward, we launched it for our first All-Star event. It was very well received because for the first time we got feedback from all our events folks, even the corporate, like imagine 2,000 people globally, some are traveling here, some are there. They said, well, we got positive feedback as to they could get to things when they needed. On the flip side, this is not an application that people are going to see every 5 minutes and kind of say, hey, what's going on? So that's the other side of it. Why the reason of our investment was low is we want the resources when people really look for it and are able to get to it. So for example, we had events in different hotels and people wanted to know, how do I get from hotel 1 to hotel 2? There was a resource for it. Or what's the office location within this hotel that has been set up for the league? They had that quickly. which was very helpful for them. So fast forward, that was a resounding success in our opinion. That was our first kind of footprint into a lightweight corporate mobile solution. Even though we had data collection solutions, we never had a CMS kind of solutions. So that was helpful. Then fast forward that, we kind of started to expand it to now flow across multiple events, syncing with our calendar, which KLST worked with us on, and then look at other syncing options in there. And also the forms engine has improved over this time, so we are using that data collection for other things. Now that was our events app. Now we are also in the process of doing a light communication intranet app using Staffbase also. And that would be our, if you call, our intranet light. And that's what we are kind of planning is, again, a subset of content that will be provisioned to the mobile device, because we recognize that, you know, while it is great to have everything in your mobile device, probably you will not need it there, right? It's not possible to have every possible content in your mobile internet into that environment. So we have to pick and choose, but you know, the good thing is the product has evolved from the point we had started to use it, and it is at a point where things are kind of syncing and there are much more API touch points in there. Lastly, I want to leave with this is we also rolled it out for our teams. For our teams piece is where there's communication between the league and team technology folks from the arenas. There's a lot of news and a lot of activities that go on from the coordination standpoint. So we do use that for that as well. But here you can see we use the multi-instance feature of this, which is fairly new, I think over a year and a half old, to kind of enable us to use this product in different ways as we see fit. But to recap, I think the lightweight content management system, the fact you can push certain contents and sync certain pieces of content, even though there is kind of work involved in it, is helpful. Push notification is helpful to some extent. Lightweight forms, if you're collecting, like for example, hey, I need stationery, or I need, are you going to attend this event kind of deal, the forms are good to that extent. Otherwise, if you're looking at heavy workflow related matters, you go into an Intex or SharePoint kind of environment there. But it's a quick, it felt like a quick lightweight solution and a quick win for us. And that's where we are.
Great.
Great.
Good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aditya. I think that the response that you heard. Absolutely. I think that the response that you heard was and it sounds like that you are about to take steps to take your platform to the next level. That what you experienced may be different, maybe a different use case than some of our customers are looking for. I know you started with events and event communication specifically, but it sounds like you're looking at different use cases moving forward as well with some of those notifications and those features.
Yeah, absolutely, because it varies case by case, but the key thing is it's a communication tool. It's not a portal, it's not an application, it's a communication tool. And you have to pick and choose your battles. So if you're looking for, in my opinion, for a quick win to have a mobile app in the device where you can quickly communicate with your employees, that's the use case we kind of picked up.
Right. I think I lost my video here, but can you still hear me? Okay, good. Well, as far as the typical question, they have some that our attendees might want to share via chat here below. And then Patrick, you and Raghrav field these questions kind of all day, every day as well. So if here in our chat, if you want to address some of those, that might be helpful for the audience. But we'll give them a few minutes to see. And Aditya too, if you have any questions for Aditya on his story and what he did at the NBA to share with 2,000, was it 2,000 people that you are connecting with, Aditya, on events?
Yeah, close to 2,200. I think the scale doesn't matter because, Patrick, you can speak to the scalability of the application. If it's in Amazon or wherever it's stored in the cloud, Azure, you can speak to that. And I think that is not as relevant. Yeah, granted, if it goes 50,000 plus, that's a different story. But I'll let Patrick speak to that.
Yeah. I mean, actually, when it comes to that, the case study that we talked about here, that Event Central app specifically is one of our smaller installations when it comes to that. We're hosted on Microsoft Azure here in the US, and that's a very scalable solution. And we have customers with many more employees on the platform that use features like push notifications and get the word out within seconds to all of them. So having said that, the scale in that sense isn't as important. It just works really for you.
Right.
Maybe while we're still gathering questions, please feel free to ask any questions that you guys have regarding SharePoint, intranets, how Staffbase can help with that, or even if you have questions to KLST and Aditya, please raise them in the chat. Yeah, maybe while we're waiting for questions, we can go through some of the common questions that we see. Maybe you guys in the audience find that helpful as some guidance. One thing that we usually hear is if it's a difference whether my SharePoint, my intranet is in the cloud or on premise. And that's something that there's subtle differences in between the two of them, but the technologies really are the same for most of the integrations that we have. It doesn't make any difference if your SharePoint is hosted on the cloud, if you have a SharePoint online, or if you have an on-premise SharePoint. Really, the baseline of those APIs are the same, and all of our integrations generally work with both. That's something we hear a lot. Maybe one question, Aditya, towards you. You were talking a lot about what you guys have been doing and the multiple apps that you have now that you're using. Can you speak a little bit towards the future plans that you have, specifically when it comes to SharePoint and Staffbase? Are there any things that you want to do in the next 1 or 2 years? What would be on your list there?
Yeah, so we are SharePoint on premises. We have a very light footprint on 365, so the plugin out of the box plugin you have works with 365. So on-premise integrations are important because we're looking at leveraging the platform to increase the footprint of content, if you will, and giving each department some granular level of control as to what he can publish as different channels within the app, and then exploring ways to integrate other pieces of content in there. So think about it like a employee briefcase kind of scenario. When someone is traveling, besides the corporate news, what else would he need or she need as a resource in there? And one of the things I had suggested in your product roadmap would be helpful down the line is if there is a very light offline capability of certain pieces of content, realistically, depending on where you're traveling, if you're in the airport, if you're in the plane, sometimes that may be useful for very frequent moving folks around. But the goal is to further fine-tune our integration and see how we can expand the mobile footprint of content there for users to use it. We have not explored the forms as much, The reason being the data collection. We have other platforms, but we have explored the fact that we can embed things like web surveys, the Survey Monkey piece in there within the plugin environment. We can use that as some of the additional features that we look to roll out into the system. The other thing that I think is helpful, which is I think you added this later on, to have a little more flexibility on how you can design the homepage of the mobile app. I think the newer design looks great. It has kind of a structure to it, and having the ability to embed videos, which is something we are planning to use as well.
Yeah, I know video is something that we get a lot of questions about as well, Aditya. I think, Patrick, are there any other common questions you guys hear about the roadmap and about what we're planning to do next?
One of the most common questions that we hear, let me just cover that one as well, is now that you already have a SharePoint, usually that means that you have an existing, you have an existing login, how your employees get access to that SharePoint. And a common question that we get is whether it's possible with something like Staffbase to use that same login, or do my employees have to create a new account? Do they need to, remember just another password? And that's actually something we do. It's called single sign-on. And we support a couple of standards here, which makes it possible for employees to use the existing login that they have with your SharePoint and be automatically logged in then into Staffbase already. And it's also a more secure solution because there's not as many accounts out there in the wild. So that's maybe just something interesting for all of you to know.
Good.
Yes, so I had a question actually while we're at it, Patrick, is why don't you speak around the fact that, certain consumer base would be intranet and sometimes maybe outside your corporate environment. And now I know we do it with some of our team users where you can segment and actually reach out to multiple and mixed authentication mode, where a certain group of people can be in one or another and still kind of revisit the same content. In our case, we had our internal people going to our ADFS, Active Directory or single sign-on. But there's a use case we also plan to use our custom authentication model as well. So I think that would be it's a common challenge, because we're talking about mostly content that resides behind the network. And then when you expose it outside, you have to go through certain challenges to ensure there is the same login, there is analytics in place as to look at usage and how we can monitor security, things like that.
Right. No, that's a great question. We tackle that problem actually on multiple levels. With releases earlier this year in Staffbase, we introduced something that we called combined login methods, which means you can have that single sign-on that I was talking about earlier, and you can combine that with a custom authentication, where you then, for example, can also invite people that do not have access to your Active Directory also to the app. For example, a partner or selected customers, or people that are about to join your organization, but they are not part of it yet. So that's all possible. And then as soon as they're in, you have various measures of targeting, where you can then make sure that only specific people see specific content, where you can then make sure that all this content that is available outside of your intranet, that's only the content that should be available outside there. And then maybe you have some more sensitive documents, sensitive news streams, and you can tailor those only towards the people that also have access to your intranet. So that's kind of flexibility is available now, both on the access level as well as the content and targeting level. Yeah, does that go in the direction that you were heading, Aditya?
Yeah. So one is your login piece, one is your targeted content, if you will. The other piece we have is
right.
Certain pieces of content only available to a handful of people that we want to target, while others have access to the channels that we use. I think that's an interesting use case, because you may have a vendor or a partner or a particular group that you want to give access to just one piece of content, which is a common use case in corporate intranet as well.
Yeah. We just recently introduced a feature called Spaces for that, where you can not just on an individual content level say this is visible for someone or visible for someone else, but you can actually group contents into a whole piece. You can say those are all the content that should be visible for my employees, and that is just the one content that should be visible for a partner. That's now possible through Spaces. I think that's what we're touching on there.
Cool.
All right.
Cool.
All right. Anything else? Any other top question here, Patrick? I know that you get a lot of them when it comes to SharePoint and Staffbase and how they work together.
Yeah, I could probably keep going for a few more hours when it comes to the questions that we usually hear, that we answer, and the needs of the customers. But really, I think at that point it would then make sense to get into a closer conversation, see where, if any of you has deeper questions to talk to us, and then we can figure out where you are and how Staffbase can help, how KLST can help.
Absolutely. I think save that hour for a demo with us. If you would like to talk all things SharePoint and Staffbase for internal comms, you could sign up for a demo at staffbase.com/demo, as well as reach out to KLST and SharePoint Consulting. We're both here for you. We are partners, and we work together all of the time to help customers like Aditya and to hear from customers like Aditya who are looking to do new things. And as we grow our products, I think that's also a very good practice.